Okay, so today we're going to be going over my experience training like Ilyin for 3 months. We can add it to the video series of just me training like a tool in general, which includes doing 5x5 back squats every day for a couple of months, and also training like the Bulgarian national team for a couple of months. Now, unlike when I trained like the Bulgarians, I followed a specific program written by Alex Krichev, which is supposedly what he did at some point in his career. Whereas with Ilya's stuff, I kind of drew inspiration from a variety of sources. There are 3 main sources for Ilya's program that we can pull from. There is an article on ATG that is supposedly his youth program. There's the Kaz scientific paper, which is how they prepared some of the Kazakhstan national team for international competitions. And then finally, there's things we can infer from Ilya's excellent YouTube channel, which includes a lot of his training leading up to the 2014 World Championships. Now, instead of going over exactly what Ilya did in his training programs, you can read those yourself if you want. I'm just going to go over the things that I drew inspiration from. Now, around the same time, I was watching quite a lot of Gabriel Sincrane, who'd recently done some videos with both Clarence and the Seeker Strength boys, so I also drew inspiration from that. Now, the first thing is morning sessions. So Ilya was doing an insane amount of sessions, 10 to 15 a week sometimes, and 3 a day. But how the Kazakhstan team were organizing it is so that the morning session was kind of a warm-up session. So you could see Ilya doing 5x3 160 front squats, moving on to some power snatchings, moving on to some clean and jerks. He's spending time in all of the weightlifting specific positions, he's practicing his technique, but for him, all at relatively light loads. Gabriel talked about a similar thing, but the Romanians like to bias strength work in the morning, so prioritize hitting their heavy squats, heavy front squats, heavy pulls, that sort of thing, and then maybe doing some technique work as well, whereas the Kazakhs like to just leave all of their heavier lifts to later in the day. The second thing I drew from was the insane amount of practice of the classic lifts. So Ilya was doing full snatch from the floor and full clean and jerks from the floor 3 days a week, as well as doing block snatches on interim days and rack jerks, so still staying very specific. And you saw a similar thing from the Romanians. They really favored snatch, clean and jerk, power variations, squats, pulls. No faff, no fancy stuff, just hitting the classic lifts. The next thing I took away from it is the insane amount of practice in the snatch. Early in the prep, when Ilya's doing triples, you can see him doing 10, 15 sets of triples, waving up to heavy weights, missing, coming back down, going back up, just practicing it like crazy. And Gabriel also talked about doing 12 to 15 working sets of snatch, and they counted sets after about 65%. So this absurd amount of practice is also something I drew from, but only for the snatch. The final thing I drew from was how aggressive Ilya is. His just commitment to absolutely ripping on bars and giving them a good crack, even when he knows he has no right. He knew that if the weight was on the bar, for the most part, he was going to give it a good rip and see what happened. Now, he did Clark weights as well, but most of the time you'd see him trying to rip under it, and I tried to embody that as well. So now let's go over what I did. So I was training 8 to 9 times a week, so 5 or 6 days a week. I might have Thursday and Sunday off, and I would do double sessions Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Now, the morning sessions were reserved for squats, snatch technique, clean and jerk technique. So I would quite often do my back squats, and then I'd move on to something like a slow pull snatch at 50 kilos or something, and then move on to some tempo power cleans and pull split jerks. I was trying to feel the positions, be fast, be snappy, but save a lot of my energy for the evening session. Now, in the evening session, I would normally start with a shed load of snatches. For example, on a Monday, I would just do classic snatch, triples. I would go up until I missed, come back down, go up till I missed, and potentially go down and come back up again. But I was aiming for that 9 minimum sets, over 65%, and then I'd move on to clean and jerks, where I might do clean jerk, clean and jerk doubles, or just clean jerks. And then normally I would finish up with pulls. So that would be how a Monday session might look. Now, Tuesdays, I would go a little bit easier. So I would have some front squats, and then I would do power snatches and push presses. But whereas the Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I would be looking for heavy weights, I'd really go after it on volume. Tuesdays, I would just sort of do 4 sets of each, around 60-ish%, and it would be more just to keep moving. So normally by Wednesday I was quite fatigued, so I put in a movement like the block snatch, which I absolutely loved, and again was something I drew from Ilya. Thursday would either be off, or I might do similar to a morning session, light snatch, light clean and jerk technique. And Friday is max out Friday, all out, max snatch, max clean and jerk, wave up and down a couple of times until I hit heavy lifts, and then call it a day. Now, the morning session there, I wouldn't go particularly hard on the snatches on a Friday, but I'd still do the technique work. And then Saturday looked almost identical to Tuesday. So now let's move on to the results. First thing is, I absolutely loved it. If I could have sustained this for longer, I totally would have done. Being able to snatch and clean and jerk that often and that heavy was just great fun, to be honest. I was also young enough and well trained enough that it didn't hurt that much, which might have changed my opinions on it. So when I started the program, I had an 100 kilo snatch. Within 2 or 3 weeks, I'd hit 105. And after that, I was hitting 100 to 105 basically every week on the max out. And I also had a couple, 2 or 3 very good attempts at 107. So a pretty good run, honestly, especially from the consistency front. My clean and jerk went from, I think it started as low as 110. Within a couple of weeks, I'd done 115. And then within a couple of weeks, I would basically hit 120 every single Friday. I just missed 125 so many times. My front squat had gone from not very heavy, I want to say, around 130 to basically consistently hitting 130 for doubles almost every Tuesday. And my back squat, I chose not to push, so I sort of maintained it around 130 to 140 for doubles and triples a few days a week. Other progress, I hit some big block snatches, 90 for 3, almost 100 for 3, which given what my lifts were at the time was huge. Some heavy paused power snatches at 80 kilos, heavy clean at 130 kilos, I want to say, which I should have tried to jerk that, I don't know why I didn't. And then one of the other things that got really good is just my technique. Doing the lifts that often, I was so sharp, so fast, and my split jerk before I started this training block was awful, but it actually got pretty solid from all the pause jerks I was doing, so that was a big win. Finally, what would I learn from this experience? Well, the thing I haven't said yet is that I tore my posterior tibialis tendon at the end of this, and it was basically from doing way more jerks than my body was used to, and I kind of just tore that tendon. So the things you can learn from this, that is, doing very high frequency lifts is incredible for skill acquisition, but you're always going to run into issues with recovery. This is really fun, but if you're natural, you're probably going to hit a wall and you just can't sustain it, and it's probably not sensible. But as always, if you want to give it a go for a month or so, you'll probably get away with it. Just don't try to do it for as long as I did. I hope you enjoyed that.